Hey guys, it's the Gaming Rift here, and today we have something very interesting to talk about. So recently a lot more information has been dropped about the PlayStation 5 Pro, and I've got to be honest, stay away from it. Please don't buy it. It doesn't look worth the money in the slightest. Speaking of price, let's get the obvious out of the way right now. The PlayStation 5 Pro in America will cost you about the equivalent of $700. $700 US for an upgrade over a console that already exists, making the PS5 Pro the most expensive console in America that we have ever seen. But wait, it gets worse. In the UK, it also costs the equivalent of £700. But you've got to keep in mind, due to inflation, £700 is the equivalent of around $900 US. Meaning that if you live outside of the United States, you are actually being ripped off by a massive amount with this product. But wait, it doesn't stop there. If you live in Europe, it costs you the equivalent of 800 euros, which when compared into US dollars is around 880. And if you live in Japan, it costs 120,000 yen, which is also very close to $900. You're paying nearly $1,000 for this console in terms of US dollars when you pay for it anywhere else in the world aside from America. That is fucking unacceptable. And you gotta keep in mind, this doesn't even include the disc tray, which is being sold separately to you for another $60, $70, $80. That is fucking ridiculous. At this point, you may as well just buy a gaming PC, because the main benefit that console guys always jump to over a PC is, oh, it's cheaper for around the same quality. Well, how the fuck do you guys defend this shit? You're paying nearly $1,000 in other countries for a gaming console, and even in the US, you're paying way above anything you've ever had to pay in your life for any other console on the market. But let's take a step back and judge the product itself, because obviously, price is not the end of the story. Obviously, it depends on whether the product itself is actually worth the price. Now, we've actually got good comparisons between not just the PS5 Pro and the OG PS5, but also its competitor, the Xbox Series X. And judging from these stats, it's actually concerning how little of a difference there is between them. For example, the CPU configuration is exactly the same, which is kind of worrying when you're paying over $200 more for it. Now, to give credit where credit's due, the other, settings like the CPU clock and, the GPU, the memory and all the rest of it is indeed significantly better than its competition, especially since the storage is, I think, between 1 and 2 terabytes, making it the first console ever to support 2 terabytes, as far as I'm aware at least. I kind of phased out of console gaming a few years ago, so I could be wrong there. But regardless, on paper at least, the PlayStation 5 Pro is the best console ever made, and is it worth the price? Well, that's complicated. But for everyone here who isn't a tech nerd, let's hear it from Mark Cerny himself.
With graphics showing something like fidelity levels of detail, but at double the frame rate. Here's The Last of Us Part 2 running on PS5 Pro. It has huge amounts of detail and targets a super smooth 60 frames per second. Let's compare this to the fidelity mode on PS5, which is only running at 30 frames per second and is therefore much choppier.
Don't stop!
This goal of delivering almost fidelity-like graphics at performance frame rates has been achieved for a broad set of titles, including Marvel's Spider-Man 2 and Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. We can see that PS5 Pro is close to doubling the power of PlayStation 5.
Maybe I'm blind or something, but I genuinely can't tell a difference between them. And the only time that you genuinely can tell a difference is when you slow the game down and you can see, the individual frames that a character is moving. There's really not even that big graphical or frame rate performance between the PS5 Fidelity and the PS5 Pro. So, double the power of the PS5? where the fuck did that power go if that's the case? And when you want to talk about performance, it's even worse. The PlayStation 5 Pro is targeting 60 FPS. Targeting 60 FPS. That was your words, not mine. For context, my gaming PC from 2018, like my original one, was considered average for 2018 standards, and that PC could run at 60 FPS on quite a lot of games. The Steam Deck, which is between a PlayStation 4 and a PlayStation 4 Pro, that could also run games at 60 FPS comfortably. This is the most powerful console ever made, and you guys are still targeting 60 FPS, which means that you're not even guaranteed to get 60. That is unacceptable, no matter which way you look at it. I'm sorry, it just isn't good enough. And this is from Mark Cerny himself. You can watch the technical presentation all you like, but essentially it's more of what you would be expecting, where it's just, oh, games will run faster, play better, etc. But what actually is an incentive to getting the PS5 Pro? Because obviously, you know, it'd be nice for, you're paying a huge amount of money for this product. You know, this is a juggernaut within the industry. You should get something really good for your money, right? Well, as far as I'm aware at least, the main reason why you would want to buy a PS5 is because of the backwards compatibility that they are promoting, where the PlayStation 5 Pro will be able to run games and have games be compatible from all previous eras of PlayStation, you know, including the PS1, the PS2, the PS3, and finally the PS4 in their own advertising, which is all very well and good. But there are 3 problems with this. Number 1, which is more of a nitpick than anything, PlayStation 4 games, as far as I'm aware at least, were always compatible with the PS5. Not all of them, I'm sure that there were a handful that slipped between the cracks, but for the most part, PS4 and PS5 versions of games were released in tandem with each other. And sure, the PS5 version wasn't compatible with the PS4, and obviously PS5 had their own exclusives, but it just seems a weird thing to advertise, that's all, but it's more of a nitpick on my part, so it doesn't really matter. The second thing is, they are advertising true backwards compatibility when Xbox Series X has had this since 2015. They are over 9 years late to the party, where with Xbox backwards compatibility, you could play games from the Xbox One, the Xbox 360, and the classic Xbox on the Series X. And once again, not all of them would be guaranteed to work, but most of them, most of the popular games, like for example Black Ops 2, hugely popular game back in 2012, is released on Series X and better than ever, aside from the hacking of course, but you know, that's not the point. The point is, these games were already backwards compatible on the Xbox, and PlayStation are advertising backwards compatibility for the PS5 Pro. And let's not forget that PC has always had backwards compatibility, because obviously generations in gaming isn't a thing on PC. If a game is on PC, you can play it on any PC you have, as long as you have the minimum required specs and you tune the game's performance to match your PC. Now, the PS5 Pro, this would be a massive W over Nintendo Switch, because obviously Nintendo is very stingy about which games are being released, and you know, the emulating setting, and obviously selling games at a ridiculous price that you've already played in the past with a HD coat of paint. So yes, this is a good thing compared to Nintendo, but it's not a selling point over Xbox, which is PlayStation's main competitor, and especially PC. The third reason why I don't think that this is very good is they are essentially promising the world to gamers. The PlayStation 2 was one of the most successful gaming platforms of all time. In fact, even when you include, you know, gaming PCs and, you know, mobile phone gaming, PlayStation 2 is still in the top 5 best-selling gaming platforms of all time. People are very nostalgic towards that platform, as they very well should be. It was a successful platform and had a handful of kick-ass games. But they are promising a hell of a lot, when I don't think in good conscience they're gonna be capable of delivering it, when the games that they release on PlayStation 5, you know, one of the most powerful gaming consoles ever, really aren't that good. Sure, there's a couple of fantastic games like, Spider-Man 2, God of War Ragnarok, etc., but we also have games like Forspoken, which was PlayStation's equivalent of Redfall, and then we have Concord, where a brand new multiplayer team shooter had such a small concurrent player base that Gollum, the worst critically hated single player game of the year, had more concurrent players playing it at its all-time peak. I'm pretty sure that Concord didn't even get 1,000 concurrent players. For context, Skyrim, which is a fairly old single player game at this point, has over 20,000 concurrent players on just Steam alone, which is one software on PC at any given point. That is honestly unacceptable. The PlayStation 5 is a phenomenal platform in terms of, the raw performance of the console, but that performance doesn't matter if the developers aren't making games that take advantage of the hardware. And based on their recent track record, I honestly don't think they're gonna be able to deliver on this. It sounds too good to be true, I'm sorry. So at the end of the day, what you are paying for is a brand new console that costs between $700, and depending on where you live, it can be closer to around $800, $900, even $1,000 in other parts of the world. And what you are getting is better hardware than the original PlayStation 5. You're getting true backwards compatibility, or at the very least that's what they're promising you, and you are getting much better game performance and all the rest of it that you would expect. So the ultimate question is it worth it? No? Jesus Christ, no. This is such a rip-off. Not even keeping into consideration that for that same price, you can get free PlayStation 4, you can get free PlayStation 4s, you can get 4 Nintendo Switches, or you can get 6 Nintendo Switch Lites. That is ridiculous. Like, you can get so much for the price of the PlayStation 5 Pro. And you gotta keep in mind, all of this pricing isn't even factoring in PlayStation 5 Pro or any of the other accessories. Like, if you want to do like virtual reality gaming, it doesn't include the price of that. It doesn't include the price of the games, subscription services, or anything. Meaning that the price after a year is gonna be absurd. At this point in time, you may as well just go with a gaming PC, like just straight up. And if you are so against gaming PCs for whatever reason, you think it's too complicated or whatever, just stick with the PlayStation 5. Honestly, like, it's not worth the upgrade, especially if you already owned the PlayStation 5. Like, there is no reason to buy this thing, because you are essentially paying, like, in total, for the original PS5 and now the PS5 Pro, over $1,000. And for that, you may as well have just bought a gaming PC. And if you are thinking of jumping to PlayStation, for example, you were on Xbox and now you're thinking that you're ready to make the jump over to PlayStation, again, I honestly wouldn't consider it. It's just, the price is just ridiculous. And again, we've been here before. Look at Xbox Series X, the most powerful console ever made. Did the games take advantage of the hardware? No. There were a couple of games that did, but it was insignificant compared to how many games are on there. It doesn't really matter if a couple of dozen games are 120 FPS, if over 8,000 games struggle to even reach 60 FPS or maintain that. We've been here before, we're gonna be here again. Honestly, do not buy the PS5 Pro. If you already own a PlayStation 5, stick with that, because honestly, it is a huge amount of money you're gonna save in the long term. And if you fancy a legitimate jump over to a good gaming platform, again, stick with PlayStation 5 or come over to gaming PC. You can honestly do far better for the price. But anyways guys, that's all from me for today. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a subscribe, like the video, all the rest of it, and comment down below whether you think the PlayStation 5 is actually a good, substantial investment or not. And as always, I will see you on the next one. Take care guys.